All right. Well, good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for joining us for today's session, Best Practices in Quality Course Design. I'm Robbie Fuselier. I'm the Senior Director for the FSU Office of Digital Learning and Academic Technology. I'm the moderator for the panel, and we'll be featuring four leaders in distance learning from Florida institutions across the state. Each of our panelists brings a wealth of experience in developing and applying homegrown quality assurance rubrics grounded in research and best practices in online teaching and learning. At the end, we'll reserve some time at the end for questions. So please jot those down if you have them. We also have the Q&A module enabled if you'd like to pop them in as we move along. Can you advance the slide, please, Tom? So before we get started, just a real quick overview of Zoom. I'm sure you have all used Zoom before. For this particular webinar, please be sure to keep your microphone muted. We have the Q&A area activated, so you can go to the bottom and enable that to type in questions. If you have some resources or some materials that you'd like to share, the chat is also available, so you can open up the chat there to paste that in. And we're also recording the webinar, and the closed captioning is available. So if you would like to see the live transcript, that's taking place as we go. Any questions about Zoom? Excellent. All right, well, let's move forward. So right quick before we get started, we are in the midst of Quality Teaching and Learning Month. We have several sessions left before the end. So they're listed right here. I encourage you to register for any that catch your eye. It's been a great month so far, and it will only get better. All right, Tom. Oh, and do you have the headshot slide too? While he's pulling that up, I'm sorry.
Oh, keep going.
I'd like to go ahead. I'll start introducing our panelists. Nikki Lyons is the Quality Assurance Manager for the Center of Online Innovation and Production at the University of Florida. Welcome. We have Cody Moyer with us, the Director for Learning Technology and Online Education with Polk State College. We have Dr. Phil Simpson, Vice President of Academic and Student Affairs and Chief Academic Officer of Eastern Florida State University. We have Josh Strigle with us, Dean of E-Learning and Academic Services with the College of Central Florida. Welcome, everybody, and thank you for participating in our panel. So I have a series of 6 questions that we're going to go through, and I'm just going to open the floor for each of you to jump in as we move along. The first question: what inspired your institution to develop a homegrown quality assurance rubric instead of relying solely on a national recognized tool like Quality Matters?
I'll jump in on this one, Robbie.
Thanks, Cody.
So we had an initiative already at Polk State centered around QM. And so, we had been through different timeframes where there was pushback against the rigorousness and just the complexity of the full QM process, right? So what we did is we kind of created a rubric on top of the QM standards because the State of Florida Quality Initiative aligned with QM's standards. And so by creating our own rubric, we were able to kind of demystify the experience for faculty and make them less apprehensive to the standards that we were putting forward. So, everything still maps accordingly like QM wants it to, but the way that we present it to the faculty, it ties into several other evaluative measures that we have at Polk State that faculty were already being measured against. And so it gave us the ability to leverage those measures with QM and say, this is a win-win for you. It's going to help you excel in your evaluation at Polk State, and it's going to improve your course design for your students, and you'll get designation at the state level.
I can follow up on that if that's okay, Robbie.
Please do.
Okay. Yeah, so as Cody has said, we wanted very much to make sure that we could demystify some of this for our faculty. And we did have, or we did, well, we still do have a very robust shared governance system at Eastern Florida State. And we wanted to make sure that our online steering committee in particular was part of this process. And I can go into more detail with later questions, but the gist of it is that this is a standing committee of our faculty academic council, which is the faculty presence in academic affairs and shared governance at the college. And this online steering committee has several goals. They have 6 of them, and that's to foster a community of online instructors based on recognized online quality standards, to provide clear guidance on RSI, regular and substantive interactions, to review and recommend teaching tools and technologies to improve the online learning experience, uh, facilitate professional development opportunities, communicate best practices and innovative teaching strategies, and of course, rely on data-driven insights to assess and recommend strategies. And part of that is, what's overriding all that is how to develop quality assurance tools for faculty. Of course, administration is guiding this and overseeing it, but the fact that we have this kind of level of faculty buy-in from a standing committee of our academic council is really important to our faculty. And I'll get more into the details of that in later questions.
I'll jump in a little bit here. At UF, we already had what were called the UF Standards and Markers of Excellence. And these were metrics that were used as a part of faculty evaluation that were strongly focused on course delivery. And so when we decided to adopt the QM rubric here at the university, we decided to merge the two, right? So at that point, we are looking at excellence in course design and course delivery together. And especially since faculty were already aware of those metrics, then it helped to ease them into thinking about us using the QM rubric, because that was something they were used to and they were familiar with. So on top of the QM rubric, we added approximately 17 other standards to help to reinforce that good teaching does go along with good design. So that's part of what helped to inspire our rubric.
Oh, that's great. I love the delivery aspect of it. We focus so much on design. That's really interesting. Josh, did you have anything that you wanted to add?
Yeah, just 30 seconds. We also have it wrapped into a bigger process, and excuse me, my mic was popping on and off there for some reason. The primary reason we did our own homegrown thing was how cumbersome the QM review process was. We did 1 or 2 of those, and for us, it was just very cumbersome. So it's part of what we call our digital literacy and compliance course, kind of our how to teach online course. Pasco shared some things with us we built on that. And so just to look at it, the rubric standing on its own is kind of difficult, because it really is, as most of the others said, it's part of a much larger process than just quality design.
Good. Thank you, Josh. So let's move on to the second question. Panel members, how do you foster faculty buy-in and participation in quality course design initiatives, especially when introducing a new rubric or process? So I'll say that again. How do you foster faculty buy-in and participation in quality course design initiatives, especially when you're introducing a new rubric or process? How do you manage that change with your faculty?
So I can kind of piggyback on what Phil mentioned in his earlier response. So we have what's called the Distance Learning Committee, which is a standing committee at the institution. And so they provide guidance for decisions around, anything that goes into that environment. And so when we need faculty buy-in, we start there, because that's a group of differentiated faculty from all campuses and disciplines, even some that don't teach online and many that do, to kind of speak into that process. And so what we typically do is we form then a smaller work group of faculty partnered alongside our team to do the hard work, get into the nitty gritty. And so, in this process, it was a matter of printing out all those different evaluative measures, such as our student perception of instruction and procedures that relate to faculty evaluation. And we just kind of mapped it all out on a table with the QM standards. And then we just started drawing lines, okay, these connect and these connect. And then we developed wording for our rubric that kind of encompassed those different pieces. And then we created what was really valuable in this process was kind of like a workbook, if you will, that went along with it, that specified what standards went into each of those rubric standards so that people could clearly see the alignment to all of the different measures that were part of each standard. And so then it made it very applicable, and they could see the direct correlation to each thing without it being too overwhelming.
Yeah, here, among other strategies, I think we've had the most success with the champion route of going directly into the departments and seeking out champions. Sometimes the department chairs have organized their department to participate in the process in math, and then the recognition they get for completing it is an artifact to go in their portfolio towards advancement and continuing contract. So all of that combined has helped us out a lot.
I can follow up on that. I'm sorry.
Oh, no, please go ahead, Bill.
All right. Yeah. So in addition to continuing contract, as Josh has described it there, we have another initiative that we can use to incentivize faculty to be part of these initiatives, as well as the online steering committee I already mentioned. And that is the Faculty Development Incentive Program, or FDIP. That is something that is enshrined in our faculty bargaining agreement. This would only apply to full-time faculty, what I'll be describing here. But faculty are able to accrue points through our faculty professional development system, and they can use it for continuing contract or progress toward tenure, or if they have points left over from involvement in various college-wide activities, they can apply those points towards what's called FDIP. And if there are 4 of those points, they're accumulated in a 2-year period, those points would be applied to faculty-based salary, and that's through a formula that's in an appendix in our CBA. So that's a relatively new approach to us, or for us, to incentivize faculty, but it's a really strong one. I mean, anytime faculty have the opportunity to increase their base salary, that's definitely something that gets faculty attention. So we're seeing a lot of faculty participation to get those points up there, in addition to what they have to do anyway toward progress, toward tenure, and maintenance of continuing contract. And then for our adjuncts, we make sure that they're able to be involved in the governance committees I've already described.
Great, thanks, Phil. Yeah, I love the idea of sending in the champions with the success stories to help motivate faculty who are on the fence. And the instructors, the faculty are asked to do so much in their day-to-day, and aligning these rubrics or the work that they're doing in course development with those other requirements, or tying it in with their promotion, I think are really great paths. We do a good bit of that here as well. Nikki, I don't know if you wanted to add anything to that, or if you were ready for the next question.
We can go into the next question because I feel like I'm about to marry the two.
Excellent. Perfect. So the next question: what are the most critical elements you include in your rubric to support student achievement? What are the most important critical elements you include in your rubric to support student achievement?
So this goes back to what I was saying about us adding additional standards to go along with and supplement the QM rubric. because we want to make sure that everything is all in alignment. Oh, hello, Kim. So that part of what we want to do is demonstrate the work that our instructors are doing to make sure that students are having valuable learning experiences. And so they can also include those in their tenure and promotion packets. And so a piece of that is making sure that the overall standards reflect the student experience. So part of that is making sure that we have standards that are very focused on community building and establishing relationships, providing students with timely and effective feedback, and then even having an instructor team presence that's very strong. It's bringing those aspects to the forefront for instructors so that they can be very mindful of incorporating them into their courses, or even explicitly telling the students that they are doing these things so that students can look out for them. Because we do notice those comments that show up in their student evaluations where they're talking about those experiences in the courses. So if they are saying, my instructor is very present, I don't have to look for them, I know when my feedback is coming to me, all of that helps to enhance the student experience. And so we want to make sure our rubric reflects that.
That is so excellent, Nikki. Thank you. Who would like to go next?
Well, I'll jump in and say a lot of what Nikki was describing feeds into the idea of regular and substantive interaction, and some others have touched on that. And we have not included that as part of our design rubric because we didn't feel like we could go in depth enough with it just being part of the rubric. So we have a design worksheet that we use for faculty, and I'm going to paste that a Google Drive link to that in the chat in just a minute. So if you've got a Google account and want to look at just a bare bones version of it that you can use and modify. But faculty go through every week of the course and they plan out those regular and substantive interactions. They turn those into us as part of the course design process. But then it also becomes a teaching artifact as well, because if I'm doing an evaluation, an online classroom observation, I can compare what I see evidence of happening in the class with what the faculty members said that they were designing into the course and what they're going to do. So I think that's been an effective way. I did that Monday, an effective way to use what the faculty member has planned in with what we're seeing and compare the two.
Yeah, we address three key areas with our rubric, and that's, the course design and the ease of navigation, learning assurance, making sure we've got that alignment there, which QM helps us do that. And then also that faculty student interaction piece. And that's how we kind of interweave RSI standards into our rubric and kind of remind faculty, this is how you can meet RSI as you're designing your course. One of the things that we have them do is they build into the course their plan for interaction with the students. In fact, we went live with simple syllabus this past year. And so one of the sections that every faculty member has to fill out on their syllabi is their plan for interaction. And we do that across all modalities. So you might expect, that it's pretty easy to know for a face-to-face course, but it might still be beneficial for those students to know the best ways to contact you and how you plan to interact with them in that face-to-face setting. And so we rolled it out across the board through our syllabi so that that's kind of part of that contract with the instructor and the student, and they can expect to see that, and it gives us visual representation of that RSI that we're trying to accomplish across all courses.
That is very interesting. So it's on the syllabus level. What would be an example or two of the things that instructors typically would put on their syllabus for a plan of interaction?
So we give them, in the instructions for completing that section of their syllabus, we actually give them a sample plan for interaction, right? So it has 4 key areas, like what are your office hours and availability and how do students schedule those with you? What's your presence going to be like in the discussion boards? If it's an online class, are you going to be present weekly, posting in the discussions? Are you going to be watching and providing comments at the end of the week? What does that look like? When can they expect to see feedback from you on their assignments? And what kind of feedback are you going to give on different types of assignments? Because every assignment obviously isn't going to get individualized feedback, but that touch point on a weekly basis, when can they expect to see that type of thing? So those are some of the key things that we're looking for there. And then just those other opportunities, whether it be, weekly course announcements that they plan to post about content related specific things in the course or other things along those lines. That's kind of just a generic piece that we give them, and then they can modify it and make it their own.
Thanks, Cody. That's great. I love that it being where it is in the syllabus. There's a commitment there, but then it also sets expectations with the students.
Yes.
Um,
I feel like that's a missing piece for us. I'm very excited to hear that Simple Syllabus will allow that to happen because we're on the cusp of acquiring Simple Syllabus here at Eastern Florida. So we do have designed very much what Cody has described. We have guidance for faculty about what RSI looks like at the course level. So we have that in what are called our online course quality standards, including a number of examples of how it can be met, many of which Cody has just listed there. So yeah, simple syllabus. That's where we're going next at EFSC.
so great. Thanks, Phil.
Sure.
Are you guys ready to move on to the next question?
Mhm.
Here we go. How do you balance maintaining consistency in course quality with allowing room for instructor creativity and pedagogical innovation? How do you balance maintaining consistency in your course quality with allowing room for instructor creativity, and pedagogical innovation?
I'll kick us off.
Great,
I'll
thanks.
say from the perspective of like boots on the ground, right? Working with instructors day to day, having those conversations about course quality. One of the things we try to emphasize is that they are the experts in what they do. Like you are the one who teaches physics. Neutron, proton, electron, friend who? So it's my job to assist them in making sure that when it comes to teaching their content, we're removing all of the barriers that get in the way of innovation, that get in the way of great course design. And so by making sure that we are meeting those standards, that then leaves them the room to get in and really have the space to innovate in their courses. And I think for our review process, part of that has also been amazing in the way that faculty are able to expand their networks by getting in touch with other instructors whose courses they have seen and who have kind of sparked a little inspiration. Because in that instance, we're able to start saying, okay, well, hey, here's a friend who's over in a STEM field who's interested in something that you're doing in the humanities and how you may be able to incorporate that in your course. What does that look like? And so at that point, we're able to help them start having those cross collaborative conversations. And so in that way, we let them know we're not trying to be in your way. We're just trying to clear the way for you. And so that often breaks down a lot of barriers for us in getting them to also have that buy-in and feel like that it's a safe space where we're not necessarily coming in with a hammer, trying to crack down on anything they're doing in their courses.
That's a concern, that we've heard too. Will quality matters or one of these rubrics stifle how they design their course or how they want to teach it. And that's a similar message. It gets a lot of the block and tackling out of the way and allows instructors to really dig in. Thank you, Nikki. Who would like to go next?
I can jump in.
Great, thanks, Cody.
Yeah, so one of the things that we try to do, first, when we first started this, we actually had a 6-week immersive seminar that we had faculty go through. We called it our Quality Online Course Design Seminar. And it was facilitated by our instructional designers. And they had to meet one-on-one with them. And we kind of informed them and taught them what instructional design really is. And that helped because then they understood the difference between design and delivery, right? As Nikki said, they can't teach their content any better than them. We can't do that for them. And so they know how the pieces all connect and go together. We just help them put it together in a way that makes it meaningful for the student and it reduces those barriers. And so one of the things that we did through that process that's still part of our process is we have the instructor do a self-review of their course at the beginning of the designation process to kind of communicate to us the purpose of the different things that they have in their course. And, seeing how they see their course as met in certain criteria helps us understand how they're looking at the content and how they're looking at the way that they're delivering it. And so then we can come to it from that perspective as we help them tweak what they're doing to make it meet the standard fully if it doesn't fully meet. And so, just having that approach that there's not one way to do it right, and that, there's multiple viewpoints and perspectives that have to be in play for us to see that they've met that standard. And so, there's just not one right way to do it. And so that's one way we help them be able to have that academic freedom to do it the way that they want.
I think one thing that helps with this is to look at it as a progression over time. And I think that helps faculty wrap their heads around where this can go and what the possibilities are, and get faculty actually excited about how consistency of both design and delivery in the online environment can really help student success. To give a concrete example of that, for a few years now, we've been developing, with the help of our instructional design team, working with faculty, master courses in key disciplines. We're trying to focus on those courses that have the highest enrollment across the board and make sure we're representative of as many disciplines as we can, so we can touch as many students as we can and have as much faculty involvement from different disciplines as we can. And these master courses, once they're completed, they do align to Quality Matters in terms of rubric mapping. But where we're going toward eventually with all this, and we wouldn't have been able to get there from the get-go, right away. But over time, I think we can, is to, in addition to deploying master courses, which faculty are free to adopt or not for their own use, but some sort of, for lack of a better term, a common course template that has certain features that are consistent from online section to section. Of course, those can be, within those parameters, faculty have the freedom to design the course as they see fit and deliver it. But I think, one of the things we're hearing consistently from our students is that their experience varies wildly depending on who the instructor is. The course can look very different in the online environment from section to section. So we're trying to, if not standardize that, at least give consistent touch points for students from section to section. And that's where this is going over time. That's the progression I'm talking about.
Great. Thank you, Phil. Josh, did you have anything you wanted to add?
Hopefully this won't open a can of worms, but as everyone was talking, I started thinking about some of the publisher design courses that are quite popular with a lot of faculty and in some cases entire departments. And when those are adopted, there's almost no freedom in design. But that's probably one of the positives for the students, is they know that to do this thing, the link's going to be here and it's going to be here for the next, and they know exactly where everything's going to be. So we try to do essentially, minus the master course initiative, we do a lot of what Phil was talking about, trying to make some of those key design elements the same. And then the parts that are evaluated on the rubric, those are, accessibility and alignment with outcomes and those types of things. So whatever it is that you have designed into your course, we're just evaluating whether it meets those certain criteria.
Thanks, Josh. When we were discussing this question previously, one of the things that came up was the intersection of course design, the quality rubrics with academic freedom or interpretations of academic freedom. Have you experienced conversations with faculty or concerns from them related to that in your rubrics?
Oh, yeah, I'll jump in on that one. Feel free to rescue me if anybody wants to as well. But yeah, we have had those concerns and we've had those conversations, but that was more toward the beginning of trying to bring some consistency to our online design and delivery. And this has been a process. It's been years in the making by this point. We don't really get a lot of that now. Maybe some in pockets individually if somebody's new to it. But as far as institutionally goes, we have a very large, I would say, degree of faculty buy-in into this process and what we can do to make the experience better for our students. Just to give one concrete example of that, a few years ago, we wanted to provide some sort of upfront training for all faculty that were taking an online session, either for the first time or if they've been teaching online for a number of years. We wanted to create a common experience for the faculty, be they full-time or part-time, to take a required training course. And it took a lot of conversations with our faculty union and our faculty shared governance committees to make that happen, to get the buy-in to do so. But we did get it into place and we've done it. And now it's standard. If a faculty member is teaching online for the first time, they take this course. It's the online course design and delivery course. And so that's great, Robbie, right? It's got both design and delivery in it.
No, I love it. And thinking about what you've said, yeah, over time, we had a lot of these questions and concerns when we were at FSU when we were kicking off our quality initiatives. But time has demystified how a lot of these quality assurance rubrics affect academic freedom and instructor creativity. Does anybody else have anything to add to that? Or next question?
I would just add to what Phil said, here at Polk State, our faculty senate was instrumental in that faculty buy-in piece and just teaching everyone the difference between delivery and design and helping them understand that. But also, whenever someone's going through that process and we run into a spot where they want to do something this way, and it may not meet what we think is the best way to do that, but we have to sit back and we actually leverage, QM's 85% rule. So is this standard 85% met? And if we can come to a 2 out of 3 agreement, then we push it through. And so we kind of lean back on QM's process there to kind of help facilitate that academic freedom whenever we come up against something where it's not the way we would want them to do it, but it is a way they can do it, and it at its base meets the criteria that it has to meet.
Excellent. Thank you for that, Cody. All right, so let's move on. Let's see. We got about 10, 15 minutes left. Let's see. So the next question, how do you gather feedback, whether from students or faculty, and use it to refine your rubric or course design practices over time? And what are some of the biggest lessons you've learned? So how do you gather feedback, whether from students or faculty, and use it to refine your rubric or course design practices over time?
So I'll start us off. As with the other institutions, we do have a quality assurance committee, and it is composed of instructors from across all of our colleges. And part of what we ask them to do is go out and be those champions, but also gather information from us, or get information for us about the instructor experience when it comes to using the rubric and participating in the review process, because we recognize they might not necessarily come to us and feel comfortable having that conversation, but they'll do so with their peers. And so being able to get that kind of qualitative data that can go along with the quantitative data that we're gathering from the reviews helps us to kind of paint a fuller picture of the experience. And that also goes with something we recently did was we started to incorporate a student presence in our committee for excellence in online learning. So inviting students who have some knowledge, so usually it's college ed, but have some knowledge of what course design and delivery look like from their learning. And so they then get to come into the committee and be that presence and have those conversations. And a lot of our faculty committee members are really impressed with the insights that the students bring to those conversations. So we're not just looking at the midterm or the final Gator evaluations where students, anonymously submit their thoughts, but we're also getting to hear from students directly about their impressions of our online course offerings, whether they see the difference in their courses as after a course has gone through the review process and engaged in continuous improvement. So being very intentional in having our student input, I think is starting to lead us in a direction of being able to use that information to further revise our rubrics on the next version.
Thank you, Nikki. I love having the student voice in your committee. That Cody or Phil or Josh, did you want to add anything?
So one of the things that early on that we thought was important was that student voice. And so when we built our designation process, we included a required element, which was an anonymous student survey that ties directly to our course design standards, right? So the students at the end of the course or whenever the instructor posts it for them in Canvas, they respond anonymously and give us data about the course design and how it impacted their experience. And so it kind of gives us real-time data that we can match against our rubric and say, here's what students are saying and how this has impacted them. And to date, this has touched over 18,000 students because we started this, in 2022. And so here we are now in 2025. And so that touch point alone is a great piece when we talk about this data, especially with administrators and with instructors, and say, look at what students are saying about their courses when they're in these quality designated courses and the impact that has on the learning experience. And so, just being able to pull that data whenever we need to has been really helpful because we built it in at the beginning, right? So we tried to think with the end in mind. What are we going to need down the road to continue to validate this process? And what's more important than student success? And so that's why it's such an integral piece of what we're doing here.
I can share something that we're currently in the process of doing, which is putting together, it's already together, a working group of faculty and administration. It's part of our faculty contract process. It's really an outgrowth of the bargaining sessions from last spring, because we agreed on a mutual work group that would, among other tasks, redesign our student opinion of instruction survey. And in the process of that redesign of the survey, we've realized that we really need to tailor that survey to whether it was a face-to-face class or whether it was an online class. I would even advocate for a hybrid class, but one step at a time, right? But it's in the process of being finalized now, and it has to go to administration and our faculty union. But we have a recommendation about what that revised survey should look like. And the survey for the online sections we're hopeful it will do very much what Cody has described here to help us to see how these quality initiatives are landing and impacting students.
Well, Phil, put that on the agenda next time. Next time we see each other,
Okay.
that interests me.
I'd love to share it today, but it's still a work product and it hasn't been finalized yet. But soon, very soon.
Thanks, Phil. Josh, did you have anything to add, or did you want to move to the next question?
No, I think the next question will generate a lot of discussion.
So this is our final question. Thanks, Josh. For the panelists, how do you see your process evolving over the next few years, especially with emerging technologies like artificial intelligence? So how do you see your processes evolving over the next few years, especially with emerging technologies like AI?
I'll jump in first. I would love to see someone or something, or maybe create ourselves, some kind of AI tool that can look at a course and assess the course design based on our rubric, right? Or look at a course and assess RSI based on the standards that have been put in there to give kind of like an overall score to help us kind of streamline that process, right? You're never going to remove the human piece of that completely, but just kind of streamlining that data collection to help us make informed decisions and help us stay ahead of the curve. I think it would be neat to see those two things evolve in some way, shape, or form, which would impact our processes.
Right. So just as your design team lifts the load off the instructor, the AI would be lifting a little bit of the load off of your team and allow you to do creative work a little more. Great.
I'm encouraged with the advancement in some of the accessibility aids and tools, because that's one of those standards that I think has to be in any of our rubrics. But it's a time-consuming process sometimes for faculty, and if they're not as technologically savvy, sometimes it can seem more intimidating to them. And I would love to see AI continuing to advance to help faculty out with some of those things that they consider heavier lifts, so that they can focus more on the pedagogical aspects of design.
I think I might focus for just a second on helping instructors use AI. We're having a lot of discussions about that internally right now. It's not official, but we're looking at some way of designating AI-infused type courses. But first, we have to make sure, we have to provide the tools and resources for our faculty to get there, to be able to use AI responsibly, ethically, et cetera, in their classes to help students, because it is the reality the students are dealing with right now and the reality that they will face in the workplace. And so if we can have what are called AI badged courses at some future point, where we talk about courses that may be AI assisted with some basic integration of AI tools that the students would be familiar with, AI enhanced, which would be moderate integration of AI into the coursework, and AI centric, where it'd be a core component of the course. I think that's a promising frontier for us. We're working on the design of that right now, and we're currently offering a lot of robust programming for our faculty for our Center of Excellence in Teaching and Learning, about familiarizing them with the AI tools that are out there and how to use them in their courses, and how to take some of the mystique and the peril out of the situation. We have a lot of faculty who are very stressed about this right now, and we're trying to approach that by giving faculty more knowledge, which can empower them to determine ways in which AI can be both guarded against when it needs to be, and flagged when it needs to be, but also deployed if it makes academic sense in their discipline.
Um, I I I think it's two-pronged as far as my thoughts on it. Um, the first is recognizing, like Phil's saying, there are instructors who are excited about incorporating AI in their courses. And there are also instructors who are not about that. They don't want it. Um, and respecting that, right? But also getting them to proactively communicate those expectations to their students at the outset. So part of what we're trying to do in our QA initiatives is begin those conversations with the instructors to say, what does responsible use look like in your course? And are you making sure that your students are aware of that? Are you modeling that for your students? And so once we begin those conversations, then they're able to thoughtfully express that to their students so that the expectations are clear. Because if there's anything we want, it's a clear expectation. And I would say selfishly, I would love to see AI integrated in a way that we can use it for data gathering, tracking, analysis, and reporting. Because a lot of what we have to do is manual, right? We've got to go in and pull the feedback, we've got to do analysis. And so if there's a way that we could get AI to kind of do that for us, then we could readily inform a lot of our efforts to ensure that we're making the best use of resources in supporting faculty who are trying to put courses together for students.
Yeah, thanks, Nikki. We're hearing the same thing. Students are really interested in using AI to help with their learning, but without that transparency or clear expectations from instructors on what they can and can't do in those courses, there's a lot of anxiety about, what will be academic dishonesty and what may not be. I know syllabi statements are really big in disclosing AI use. I guess we passed the syllabus section already, but that would have been a nice one right next to that RSI segment.
So we actually have a policy for that in there too. We call it plagiarism in artificial intelligence, and we actually have a section where the instructor has to edit what their policy is so that it's in every course. So we put the institution's kind of overarching policy on cheating and plagiarism because it already covers something generated by AI. We didn't make an AI specific policy. But then we require them to put what their classroom policy is. And we give them a couple examples in the instructions. Like if you're for use of AI, here's some examples, and they can take it and elaborate on it. Or, if you are prohibiting the use of, here's some examples. And we don't take a stance one way or the other, you should do this versus that. It's up to each individual instructor to determine their comfort level and how they're going to integrate it with their students in the classroom.
I see Bob refer to it as unauthorized collaboration, and that's how we see it too. Unauthorized group work is how we would, well, not necessarily group work, but in that sort of category. Let's see. I have a question, but before we move to the question, Josh, did you have anything that you wanted to add?
I was just going to say we do almost the exact same thing that Cody does. We use simple syllabus too, so we've got a lock field that has the institutional little blurb about what AI is and why students should know what's acceptable in a particular faculty member's class. And directly below it, there's an editable field that they're forced to put something in, or else their syllabus is going to look a little strange if they don't fill that field in.
So yeah, AI is affecting things all across the course. Thank you guys for your feedback on that. So I have a question from Aaron. So changing gears here a little bit, kind of switching back. Could you share how your institutions have successfully integrated quality course design initiatives into the criteria for continuing contract, promotion, and tenure. So Phil, you had touched on this a bit. Specifically, what strategies or processes were employed to ensure these initiatives were recognized and valued in faculty evaluations?
Well, that is also something that's in progress with another work group that's between administration and faculty to redesign our faculty evaluations. So yeah, as with the student survey, that too is a work product I can't quite share yet, but when it's finalized, I'll be happy to share it with everyone who would like to see it. It's something that will live in our faculty contract as an appendix, but it will make distinctions between how we evaluate courses that are face-to-face and those that are designed and delivered online. So we have the recommendations in from those work groups right now, and it's up now. The next stage is administration and our faculty union will review separately, and then we'll get together at the bargaining table and finalize it. So I'm very excited about where that's going. That's going to be a great move forward for us.
We
sounds
don't we don't assign a certain number of points to participation in this process or anything like that, but teaching excellence is one of our categories for faculty seeking advancement in rank. It's the most heavily weighted category. Depending on which rank they're applying for, they need a different kind of volume of evidence. So for each one of their courses that goes through this quality review process, as well as their completion of our overall kind of how to teach online course, those would all be pieces of evidence for that most heavily weighted portion of the portfolio process.
Thank you, Josh.
We strategically approached it as making sure that this was something that was encouraged and embraced by faculty units. And so part of that meant having conversations with some of our faculty senate councils and committees to get their impressions and their buy-in, get their feedback on how we could ensure that we were making a recommendation that was reflective of faculty work and also respective of bargaining. And so ultimately we ended up making a recommendation that essentially participation in the quality assurance process would be a marker that could be included in promotion and tenure packets. Whether that's, demonstrating that commitment to quality teaching, and being able to say, I'm teaching these online courses and I have earned a designation. And so making sure that we on our end are communicating what does it look like for someone to earn a designation for their course, and talking about what it is to have an instructor do their instructor self-review of their course, receive feedback from their peers, possibly make revisions to their courses, and having an understanding of what that looks like so that when departments are having conversations about how much effort a person's putting in, they have a clear picture of what that involves. And then for instructors who serve as peer reviewers of courses, right? Also communicating the time allotment that they're making toward providing their peers with feedback, ensuring that we're also talking about that as well, so that as instructors are putting in that effort, it's recognized and it's acknowledged to the point of them receiving, I guess, credit for doing the work.
Right. Great. Thank you, Nikki. Thank you all for sharing your valuable insights today. It's clear that you're very thoughtful and intentional in how you're applying these rubrics and these quality assurance metrics. We really appreciate you sharing these practices with everyone here today. Thank you all so much for your time, and thank you to the FLVC team for helping coordinate our webinar as well. We can take, I don't know if we can take questions anymore, but we can take some last ones offline. If you guys have some you want to send our way, we can get back in touch with you.